Welcome to another conversation in People in Fundraising. This podcast features interviews with nonprofit professionals who discuss their career journeys, lessons learned, and enthusiasm for working in fundraising. And here's your host, the founder of People in Fundraising, Tim Wilson.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our next conversation in the philanthropy podcast series, peopleinfundraising.com. And today I am delighted to welcome my friend and longtime colleague from Harvard Business School, Roger Fussa, to our podcast series. It's great to see Roger. The last time Roger and I connected in person was about 4 years ago when I was leaving Harvard Business School, leaving Massachusetts and moving out here to Utah. And just to take a moment here, I want to, with Roger's permission, I'm going to share.
Absolutely.
This is a photograph from our lunch that Roger was very kind to take me to as part of my farewell celebration, like a rolling celebration that went on for a while. And
my kids are aging me badly, Tim. So it's great to see that picture.
Yes, and it's a great memory, and I'm honored that you would be on our podcast, and I really appreciate how our friendship has continued across the miles and time. So Roger is currently at Buckingham, Brown and Nichols, which is located in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And at BB&N, Roger is the leadership and planned giving officer for this independent school. He's been there for several years in this role and had some tenure there beforehand. And with that very brief introduction, I'd like to turn it over to Roger. If you want to share a little bit more about your specific responsibilities at Buckingham, Brown and Nichols, as well as how long you've been there, and briefly synopsizing your career in the development industry. That would be awesome.
Sure. So I joined BB&N, Buckingham, Brown and Nichols, in November 2016. I was hired as a development officer, and I was in the BB&N fund. My job was working with lower level leadership donors and with reunion classes.
Okay.
And my position shifted over time. One thing they wanted me to do when I first started was to help build a program of corporate support for the school. And that's not something that independent schools typically have. And I thought that the school could do. After my first boss left, that was put on hiatus. So we haven't been pursuing that. But that was part of my charge at the very beginning. I've done a variety of things in my time here. So there was the corporate work that I started out doing. We took some first steps with it. Okay. And yeah. Additionally, I was also the school staff liaison for its faculty and staff liaison at the 3 campuses. So it's a day school, beginners, pre-K through 12th grade, and 3 campuses. And my job was to get to know the faculty and the staff and ask them for money. So for faculty and staff giving. 3 years ago, 2019, the head of our office sounded me out and asked whether I would consider taking on a planned giving portfolio for the school. We didn't have a planned giving officer. We have a wonderful colleague here who does marketing on planned giving. And I didn't say yes at first. I really had to think about this. There are 2 reasons why. The first is I can be sometimes one of those fundraisers where I like the activity, and this is probably not a great example, and not Yeah, I imagine Utah doesn't have gambling. So, but let's say another state that does, and they might enjoy it more. I could be at the, pulling the handle on the slot machine 100 times all night. And as long as I get a couple hits, I'm happy.
Yeah.
Here with Plant Giving, it's really a much longer frame of work. And so it was, I wondered whether I would have the temperament to manage that and feeling like, okay, nothing is happening. Nothing,
Sure.
And by nothing is happening, I don't mean people dying, by the way. Because gosh, if I start hoping that my donors start dying, then I want to be out of this job. I don't want to do it.
Sure.
It's more like, arranging Plan Giving arrangements. It's like, in an ideal world, we would have, a complicated instrument called a charitable lead trust. Something like that could take quite some time to figure out, lots of legal fees. And when you're in the annual fund, you're on a cycle of July 1st to June 30th. And there's a lot of activity. And so there's a lot of gratification in that way. The other reason that I hesitated in taking on the role was because we had 4 Plan Giving consultants in here in previous years, all with lots of experience. 2 of them work with my wife at Harvard University in their Plan Giving office. One was a graduate of the school, BB&N. And it's just been hard to make progress here on Plan Giving. It's really a field that requires a lot of consistency, long-term thinking, patience, and also resources and the support of leadership at the top level. So I thought that I would maybe be entering into a situation where I would not be able to get much done.
Yeah.
And I suppose I can say, among other things, that while I was flattered to be asked, it was a great professional opportunity. And I have been able to do things for the school. When I was asking the head of the office about it not being a full-time position, she said, well, frankly, there would not be enough right now, given the status of our program, to keep a full-time person busy. And so my charge became building the foundations or structure. And so I can be very proud about that. I always wish to be doing more, but that's my job here at BB&N. The final thing to say about it is that until this last fiscal year, beginning last July, I was still in the BB&N fund. So it was a really weird or unusual hybrid role where I had fund responsibilities, which included reading classes. I had a portfolio of leadership donors, and I had Plan Giving. And the one challenge with that is, although the Plan Giving was supposed to be 50% of the job, that would end up getting squeezed out with the pressures of June 30th, for instance, Day of Giving, or the end of the calendar year, fill in the blank, or reunions. So I ended up spending less than 50% of my time on the Plan Giving portfolio that I had. What happened, we're in the quiet phase of a campaign, is now I'm in the major gifts group. So I have my portfolio is smaller, more concentrated. I have about 95 prospects between Plan Giving prospects and leadership gift prospects. Some, of course, were both.
Okay.
And your question was my journey into fundraising. Was that correct, Tim?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
How did you get into the field?
So it was not planned. You and I, we both have backgrounds in history and love it. And let me see. Well, my dad also got a degree in history. He went to Fordham University. He went there later in life after I was born. And we ended up moving to Charlottesville, Virginia when I was 6 years old. And it was challenging living there at that time because my dad was half African-American, half Puerto Rican. My mother was half Irish and half English. She was born in England, raised in Ireland. And so we went back and forth between the Bronx, where I'd lived as a little kid and where Fordham is, and Charlottesville. that in part because of that experience, I was really interested in civil rights law. And I did my undergraduate thesis on the American Civil Rights Movement. And I thought I would be a civil rights attorney.
Oh, interesting.
I didn't really have the temperament for that, but you could just say it was coincidental, but somehow I think that there's you gravitate towards certain things. And I ended up at Georgetown University soon after I left that job, or actually immediately after I left that job.
Oh, okay.
Georgetown University is a Jesuit institution, just as Fordham is. So I worked at Georgetown for 9 years. I had a boss who could be very tough, but I appreciate that because he really made me a better employee. And I remember speaking with someone after he left. He said, "Well, please don't pretend that you're sorry he's gone." And I said, "Well, actually, I really do appreciate him because, I wouldn't have the job I have now if it hadn't been for him, because he made me better." And we kept in touch. He sent me something from the Chronicle of Higher Education one Christmas, and it was about a fellowship program at Harvard University, and it's for people of color. And now the program is 32 plus years old. And what it does is it places fellows, ministry fellows, for 1 year management experience at Harvard University. And they look to see where there might be a fit.
Okay.
Yeah. So you don't apply to a specific school like the Kennedy School or the Faculty of Arts and Sciences or the Divinity School. You apply to the president's office.
Oh.
I did not have a fundraising background. And I hadn't worked at a business school and didn't really have a business background, or had very little of one. I had worked for a financial services company for a year, but that was before the Equal Opportunity Commission. So I applied for this program, and one day I got this email from the Harvard Business School, HBS, and the email was from the HBS HR office talking about the fellowship and talking about the success of the HBS fund. It sounded like a fundraising job.
Yeah.
So I didn't respond to the message for about a day because I thought, oh my gosh, I'm doing missions work here in academic affairs at Georgetown. I actually was befuddled. I didn't understand why the Harvard Business School would be interested in me as a candidate, because there didn't seem to be any obvious match in my mind. I sat on it for a little bit, and then I got back within a day, and I thought to myself, well, I can do a lot worse in life than being at HBS. And so I decided I'll keep an open mind.
Yeah.
And I figured it would only be for a year or two anyway. And why not get experience in something new?
Sure.
So they flew me up, I flew myself up, and I met lots of different people. I mean, probably had 8 different interviews, as HBS tends to do.
Right.
And I really had to think about whether it was something that I wanted to take on, because I was trying to finish my master's thesis at the time.
Yeah.
It was in American political history. And it's hard to finish a master's thesis or a doctorate if you leave where you are to take some wonderful opportunity. I decided, though, that I would take the chance, in part because my mentor was so supportive of that decision. And I thought that my year at HBS would be, I wouldn't say I'd have my feet up on the table, but I thought it would be, this is a time where I can really reflect, and I'll get to go to seminars at the Kennedy School, the medical school, the Divinity School. I really learn about a complex institution, and
Sure.
take everything that I learn and take that with me wherever I go in the next step of my career. HBS had different ideas. And I did do the seminars, but HBS, they very much believe in sweat equity. And so I, within less than 2 months, I believe, they had me out on the road by myself, which I never expected.
Baptism by fire.
Yeah, doing work for the fund. What I had not realized is that, at least at that time, they had a peer-to-peer solicitation model. And so a lot of it was volunteer management, and I'd done a lot of volunteer management. And there was also you're recruiting volunteers, and I'd worked in admissions at Georgetown part-time, and I was good at that. I liked that. I liked recruiting applicants to apply and admitted applicants to come.
Yeah.
So it was a good fit, and I loved the people. And by the way, Tim, you were one of the first people I met. You've been just a wonderful friend. We have a strong interest in history together and baseball. So it's always great to speak with you. You're just a great person to have met early on, because coming here to the Boston area, I didn't know anybody really. So it felt like a very big jump. Well, it was a big jump.
Yeah.
Let's see. So that this doesn't go on, so that you don't have to cut out massive parts of this of this talk.
I don't do any editing, so
yeah. Oh, okay. Well, then I'm going to have to be I have to be a lot more disciplined in my answers.
And if I can just interject, so this is professional but not perfect, and more of I think of this podcast as like a classroom where things can go wrong. Like the professor could be writing on a chalkboard and the chalk breaks. If you noticed a few minutes ago, Roger, or my audience, when this video gets posted, I was distracted for a moment, and this is a real life moment. These videos are on Zoom, and Zoom said that I had about 5 minutes left in this interview before it cut us off. And I didn't want to stop Roger from talking. I didn't want to splice two different interviews together. And he had already shared a lot of great detail about his family and his early career and his studies. I didn't want to have to go back and try and recapture that in a second longer interview. So I was upgrading my license with my eldest child's help for a few minutes, having her grab my credit card. I was texting her. So again, I try to keep this professional, but it's not.
That was very professional.
Perfect. So
being professional.
If you noticed me looking down, I was trying my best to be discreet about what I needed to do while not interfering with the story you were sharing with us so generously. So continue.
Well, I was being so self-involved, I didn't even notice. So. So yeah, after my fellowship ended, I was thinking about what to do, and there are various job opportunities, possibilities. One was in the alumni office at the Graduate School of Education at Harvard. One was at the Harvard Law School. One was the registrar at the University of Virginia Law School. I was offered an admission doing multicultural recruitment for admissions for Hampshire College.
Oh, interesting.
For that interview, I wore my dark blue suit, and the director of admissions came in wearing shorts. And we ended up talking about the Clash, which is not the conversation I had when I had my interview at the Harvard Business School.
No, I can't imagine.
Yeah. So the Harvard Business School had an opening in the Alumni Relations Office.
Yeah.
As the liaison for its alumni clubs, the Alumni Clubs Network. And it was a great opportunity. Just like with the fellowship, there was a lot of sweat equity. I did a lot of travel, learned a lot, met a lot of great people, including my wife. Because At that time, my wife was working in the Harvard Alumni Association in their clubs department. She was their staff person in charge of the Speakers Bureau program, and gave me some great advice. I mean, one thing that I loved about that job is my opportunity to work with faculty on faculty speaking at the alumni clubs.
Okay.
So I did that for a number of years. Then I continued on at Boston University, doing somewhat the same, but in a managerial role. Then at the time, I was doing a graduate program in communications and publications at the Harvard Extension School. And I wanted to do more writing work. And so part of that still remains for me.
Okay.
To make a very long story short, I ended up going to Exeter Academy for a brief period of time as a contract employee. And I was doing some web work for them and some communications work. And I really love digital things. And so my one-year fellowship at the Harvard Business School, I actually did some web work as part of that as well. So after that ended, I ended up working at a family services organization. Partly it was a writing job, but more direct fundraising. The transition point for me here, in a way that connects these elements in terms of the direct solicitation, is that I really love movies. And when I first moved here, as I said, I didn't know anybody. So one thing I would do is go to the Brattle Theater at Harvard Square. I love being there. And because it's a small world, my wife had gone to Smith College with the executive director. So when the Brattle was having trouble, they asked my wife and I to help out on their fundraising campaign.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I got their first corporate gift.
Nice.
I was nervous doing it, but it looked like the Brattle might fold. And I thought, well, I've got a good idea. And I went over to speak to the president of the Coop, who's a Harvard Business School graduate.
Oh, okay.
And we collaborated at HBS and some things, and we did get that support. So I had that was my real direct experience. After the family services organization, then I shifted and it's been the last 10 years, into direct solicitation work. My background, as I said, is in history. And so being in a history organization was kind of a dream come true for me.
I bet. Yeah.
It fits so well in a number of ways. It's the Newton Historical Society, or Historic Newton. Historic Newton's an umbrella organization. They have two museums in Newton, and one is a stop on the Underground Railroad. And so I have a strong interest in civil rights and also the history of the Civil War and the antebellum era. And so it was great being there. And as I said, it suited me well in that there was a lot of, it was particularly focused on the annual fund and membership and all the things like that. So there was a lot of activity, which suited more of the part of my personality looking for constant activity.
Sure.
And also it was fun. We had really great events. We had a fundraiser that we had was a concert at Newton North High School. So we did 3 or 4 of those.
Oh, okay.
And those were always fun to do. And we had a tour of historic homes, largely in Newton, which I didn't think would be my type of thing, but I love that as well.
Nice.
As far as being here at Buckingham Brown and Nichols, I wanted to do major gifts work. And at Historic Newton, I built a program of corporate membership from 0 to 25. And I shouldn't say I've done it myself. I'd partnered closely with the board chair and the board member who had been the chair of the campaign. Great guys. And that was starting to take over the organization a little bit. All the logos, I guess, were problematic. Because it's not what you expect to see for a history organization, all the branding and this. So I guess I took that as far as it could go.
Okay. It's maybe the equivalent of having logos on baseball uniforms, which I know it's now settled. They're going to do some logoing, but you and I both love baseball, and that's been a hot topic for a number of years.
It's not everyone's thrilled about it. It did put the organization in black, but so then I specifically wanted to work at this institution, Buckingham Brown and Nichols, BB&N, because our our son had gone to the summer camp here, and he'd been
Oh.
treated really well. He had had some challenging issues in kindergarten with, he's got ADHD, and so I didn't know where he could go, and I just really loved the environment. It was kind of quirky and it was very Cantabrigian.
Yeah.
And so I applied twice, actually. The first time I didn't get the job, and then I applied again. And it's been a wonderful time for me. It's been a wonderful experience. I mean, I've gotten, it worked out the way that I hoped it would. And that is that I could take my career to the next level, as moving up to a much higher level of solicitations.
That's dynamite. Roger, there's so much that I would love to dive into more about your career, because you've mentioned various institutions. You've looked for institutions that fulfill your personal interests as well. So I know you did a lot of volunteer work with the Brattle for a number of years. Historic Newton. I remember you gave me a tour of the Historic Newton headquarters one time, many years ago. So, and then the reason why you were drawn to Buckingham, Brown and Nichols is also a moving experience. And I would just like to ask, as you look back on these various institutions, whether it's HBS, Exeter, Historic Newton, Boston University, and the different roles you've had. You've done alumni relations, direct solicitation, writing, digital marketing and such. Is there a person that sticks out in your mind as, maybe your first example of like professional leadership, or someone that maybe wasn't the first manager you had, but someone that really sticks out as an example of professional leadership that you would learn from and try to emulate as your career has progressed?
There are a few different, I guess, small examples, I suppose, but they meant a lot to me. So when I was on that one-year fellowship at HBS, the executive director stepped down. Jim Schroeder, I think Jim's last name was.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And Jim was leaving to become the head of fundraising at the Mayo Clinic.
That's right.
And I think I saw Jim at the HBS gym, and he's the one who brought it up. I think maybe he had a day or two left. And so he reached out to me. He said, well, Roger, if you'd like to chat, this is your opportunity. And one thing I've learned over these years is the need to extend yourself.
Yeah.
And extending yourself, opportunities happen when you're not in the office or when you're doing things that make you uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. But in this particular case, I was lucky. I had someone who took the interest, and Jim was nice enough to meet with me on his very last day. So he must have been really, really busy. But he took that time. And I was always really impressed by that, because he probably doesn't remember. I don't know. I maybe I should get in touch with him and say, Jim, I've always remembered that.
Yeah.
And he told me something that, he probably told me many things that I don't remember, unfortunately, and that's my bad. But one thing that really stuck in my mind was, he said that people try to do this job perfectly, and it can't be done perfectly. Mm. And if you try to do it perfectly, you're going to make yourself sick. And so, I've thought about that, because there's a lot of turnover in the fundraising development industry in the Boston area. And people do get burnt out. So, Jim was one example that I think of. I didn't report to him, but that really made an impression on me.
That's very touching. Thank you for sharing that.
At Georgetown University, I didn't work for this dean. I was in the academic program. There's the extension school, or the School of Continuing Studies. And there was a meeting where something came up, and she said, look, that's completely on me. I dropped the ball. And in my mind, as I've gotten older and I've tried to anchor myself on that, saying, I don't want to be the person who's hiding the mistakes or is afraid to say I got it wrong. And frankly, I'm not a perfect person. It's gone back and forth at times and sometimes I think, okay, well, do I really have to tell everybody when they didn't ask? Did I, that I screwed it up? We all make mistakes. Yeah, we all make mistakes. Yeah. So that was another person. And I think that, going back to the dean at Georgetown, whom I did work for, Dean Sullivan, he made a big impact on me because, my life would not be the same if it had not been for him. And there were two things about him, that he's the type of person who you could really have an argument with him about something. I could push him on something, sometimes be wrong, but he would forgive me. And not everyone is like that. Not everyone can listen to the 25-year-old and 24-year-old and have patience and end up recommending that person for a promotion a few years later.
Right. And very true.
I was a lot different place at that time, personally and professionally. And I'm Generation X. It was the slacker years. And I don't know, I was kind of embracing that to a certain extent. Nirvana and the early 1990s. And Richard Linklater, I was there, but Dean Sullivan, Charles Sullivan, he would say, look, Roger, I'm tired of you saying sorry. Where I would mess something up. He's like, I want to hear what you're going to do differently. And I've always carried that, it's like, because, and I've gotten better at it to a certain extent. I think okay, people should accommodate my shortcomings or weaknesses. That's not really fair. I need to do the best job that I can. But going back to the example I said about Jim Schroeder at Harvard Business School, that has to be balanced too with what's reasonable.
Yes.
Because there's more to life than, the gifts are important, but the way that I put it at Historic Newton, I love history, but we were not curing cancer there.
Yeah.
Someone said about maybe here at BB&N, we're not storing the Utah beaches at D-Day. The world's balance, the balance of the world's, not at stake or hanging in balance because, what we're doing here, although it is important.
Yes.
Those are some disjointed examples, but some things that occur to me.
I appreciate both of those examples. I think it's a nice contrast, where you had Jim Schroeder saying, you can't do everything perfectly. We'll welcome whatever you can do to the best of your ability. I'm paraphrasing. Then you had Charles Sullivan saying, let's learn from our mistakes, not just keep apologizing. And I think that those are interesting verbal expressions from leadership at a formative time in your career. So thank you for sharing those.
Yeah, they were both important. And my kids get tired of it, but I do tell them at times of this example with Charles Sullivan, how important that was, because I think at the time I expected, I'm a good intentioned person. I just apologized to you. And we're good, right?
Right.
And he was like, no, we're not good. I had to clean up that mess for you.
Right.
We're not good at all. And that's becoming more mature and realizing that we have responsibilities to other people, and also realizing that we make mistakes. Apologizing is very important, but also figuring out what you're going to do to rectify the situation, make amends, or reduce the possibility of happening in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's marvelous that you have found ways to bring that professional advice into your personal life and with your children. I think that's a gift to be able to see opportunities for their own development in a setting that's not obviously in the workplace. So thank you for
I don't know if
sharing
they would feel that's wonderful, but they
well, maybe not right now, but but speaking of the workplace, Roger, my last question. So before I hit record on this interview, you and I were just chatting, catching up, and you mentioned that you're working full-time in the office on the BB&N campus, and you shared just some colorful, fun anecdotes about what you do on campus with, and you mentioned earlier the Clash and so forth. So if you could just recount sort of your musical tastes and how you get through the workday in a way on campus, that'd be fun to hear for our audience.
So I've always listened to music as much as I could. One of the nice things about getting promoted, they got Dean Sullivan when he was leaving to go to the University of San Francisco. He gave me, this is a tangent, a framed copy of his book Ireland in Poetry, and that really meant a lot.
Oh,
and
wow.
Soon after I arrived at Harvard, I saw that very same book at the Globe bookstore, which used to be on Church Street at Harvard Square. And so when I did get promoted, I had someone working for me and listened to a lot of music, lots of, at that time I'd gotten into Bob Dylan. I really enjoyed listening to Bob Dylan because I think you can learn a decent amount about American history listening to Bob Dylan.
Agreed.
The way that my colleague or the guy working for me put it was, he said, "You're a musical schizophrenic." So like me, at one point I would be listening to The Sound of Music, and then 10 minutes later, Smells Like Teen Spirit or something like completely different.
Yeah.
I was talking to someone today about music, and it was very random. I was at the dentist's office for cleaning, and she said, "Oh, we're the same age." And I mentioned, I thought at this age, when I got this age, this is how I envisioned it when I was in my 20s. I'd be listening to classical music, and that's it. I would. And the thing is, I still like the things that I liked then. My interests are just broader. I know more. I didn't know anything about the blues. And I know that I have decent background knowledge now. I dabble in lots of different things. As far as being in the office is concerned, so the joke that I was telling you was we were polled about who wanted to come back to the office. And that's as we were transitioning back to being here physically, because the advancement office had been working completely remotely. And it was an anonymous poll. And there were 16 of us. 2 people wanted to continue to work remotely until the end of December 2020. Let me see, 13 of us wanted to work hybrid, and there was one person who wanted to be back full time. And in the staff meeting, I said, well, actually, the one person, that was me. And there's a nice thing about being at home, but right now we got 2 pandemic dogs, poodles, who will bark at inconvenient times. Our kids, although they should know to knock on the door, don't always when I'm in a meeting, or they think they're being really sly. Like, so I was on some meeting, and my 14-year-old comes in trying to go underneath the angle of the camera to get whatever he wants. Like, it's not going to bother me, right? I'm not noticing. So I certainly listen to a lot of music at home. This is a wonderful time to be in the office because there's no one to complain about my music here right now because I can play whatever I want. So I remember when I was at the Harvard Business School, when everyone was gone, playing Led Zeppelin or Blink 182 or and Blink 182 was a new band at that time.
Oh, okay.
They might be in the oldies station now. I listen to different things depending on what my mood is, and it's nice. It's a very nice balance right now because there's a lot of flexibility. A lot of credit to the school for that, and to my boss, and that means sometimes there are not very many people here.
Yeah.
So if I want to put the Led Zeppelin back on, or even something else, I don't know. This is going back a ways, Arrested Development, some hip hop. I go ahead and do it.
Sure.
You played Kendrick Lamar too. Whatever I enjoy doing is probably not what you expect to hear coming out of the office of the plan giving person.
That's awesome. There's something to be said about just in my opinion, like the bombastic rolling thunder of John Bonham's drums in the Led Zeppelin song "When the Levee Breaks." Whether I'm out for a run or if I'm working on something that's very deadline driven, there's a few sections in that like 6-minute long song where he just goes on this awesome tangent, and it fuels me. So I appreciate you mentioning some of the bands that help you get through the day as well.
Well, once again, I never thought I would be listening to the same things, but I don't listen to them as much because I listen to more things.
Yeah.
And the really nice thing about that is until I lose my hearing, sometimes you can make connections between music that you didn't understand before. So the tight connection between blues and rock and roll, I didn't understand. I didn't know. I for the Rolling Stones, for instance, I listened to Hot Rocks, and there's some blues tunes on that. But if you listen to Beggar's Banquet, then you can really feel it and understand it.
That's dynamite. It's great to see those connections and see an artist develop as they progress in their endeavors. I feel like I'm very similar to you in that way as well. Just how's an artist, a writer, a band, a painter, how do they develop in their skill set? And to see that with the benefit of hindsight for us is something I really am drawn to as well.
So when we've gone on too long, I don't want you to have to edit me out. But if you have to cut off at this point, that's fine. I'll end, unless there are things that anything else you'd like to add, by saying that I was in an interview with someone here at BB&N, and then they asked me, I asked everybody, what's your favorite part of the job? I thought about this. Of course, my job is to raise money. If I don't raise money, I don't have a job. However, I said, and these are not disconnected. I said meeting alumni, because they're fascinating people.
Yeah,
they're doing all sorts of different things, and it's a privilege. Like the former ambassador to Russia and former ambassador to South Korea and Turkey, he's a graduate of our school. He got together with me in DC, and we had drinks, and we've stayed in touch.
Wow.
So that's an example where we can talk about David McCullough's Truman, but also I can speak with someone who maybe is really interested in rock music or hip hop or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Thinking about having gotten older and learned these things, I can touch base with people on different levels in ways that I find very interesting.
That's beautifully said, and thank you for sharing that. It wasn't planned. It was very impromptu but heartfelt. So I really appreciated that last anecdote, Roger. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
You said edit me away if you have to. I won't.
I've got 4 kids and a full-time job. I don't have time to edit. I don't want to either. I want to keep this as, again, professional but not perfect. And I think That'd be for everyone that I interview. I don't intend to edit their interviews because I want it to be capturing the essence of the conversation and the mood and what was on the interviewee's mind at that time. So this is all preserved, and it's been so wide ranging, and I really have enjoyed that. Both the wide rangingness of your skill set development, the institutions you've worked for, and just your personal interest with history, music, and movies and so forth. So thank you so much, Roger. It was a delight to reconnect with you.
It's always great to see you, and thanks for being a wonderful friend. And if you need me to strong arm other people into doing this, you got it. I'd be happy to. I get you some great guests, I think.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I would just end as well by saying I'm very grateful for our friendship. You know, I looked at your LinkedIn earlier and I thought, wow, it's been almost 20 years since we overlapped at HBS. And in my mind, like, we worked for a longer period of time than it was in actuality. But I'm just very grateful that,
Me too.
20 years later, we're still connecting and interested in what each other is pursuing in life, professionally and with our families. So I appreciate your friendship, Roger. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tim. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.